have you like on some bullshit.
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Hey, girl, so sup?" And then they just
How you doing?
No,
And you're like, I'm supposed to drive the conversation. You're the host.
I really am my age though.
Yeah.
No, I just realized
Listen,
I'm my whole age.
I appreciate every single year too.
Seriously,
Every single year.
I'm getting supple with age.
Yeah.
Like I'm not becoming hardened because there are some hard old bitches. You know, I love them.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't mean not lie. No, but I'm not getting hard with age. They get on my nerves.
Yeah.
Even when I love them, they get on my nerves.
You're like, do
No,
the work, baby.
Yeah, I'm getting more supple, and being supple means doing less.
Yeah.
But people react to it like it's more.
Absolutely.
Like the story I told you about the Uber driver. He was an asshole to me. So I was like, oh, you're an asshole. I'm disengaging.
Yep.
And here he is, like juggling
it.
in the front seat, fire breathing. I'm like, sir, we don't need to talk.
I was just telling someone that I have architected my entire life to avoid white shenanigans.
Oh, that's wow. You should really market that.
Yeah.
There's a market for that. It's called America. Wow.
And like, I'm, and you can't to some extent ever avoid it, right?
Yeah.
But I've been doing so much stuff. Like when I jumped out of Code 2040, as I was building my consultancy, I was like, what I really want to focus on is leaders of color leading multiracial organizations.
People of color being gatekeepers is a game changer.
Listen. And like, I just know how hard it is. Like I spent like a year in bed. And then when I came out of bed and was like, after having thought about everything, I was like, man, there's so many people, there's like entire industry about DEI, which is like really about the segregation of high wage work. And we don't talk about it that way.
Okay, this feels like a segue into the hot topics with Kim Kardashian. All right, this is the part where we let's talk about capitalism, light work. You know, just light work on the first full day of spring. This is the part where you cue the music, and let's have some water because I want to make sure that we are not parched for this one. When you mentioned, oh Lord, I felt a shiver go down my spine. You know, we always go through hot topics. For those who are watching the show on YouTube, this is my good friend Karla, Karla, how long have we known each other?
Since 2008, however many years that is.
Yeah, how many years is that?
Yeah.
14.
14 years, yeah.
That's the year I joined Twitter.
Yeah.
And we were just talking how we're always ourselves.
Yeah.
Wherever we go. You've always been Karla.
You've always been blue. And I think that's why it works.
It really is. Not a
There's
cold
not a whole
switch
lot,
in sight.
No.
But I love what you were about to say about just how they gatekeep high wage earnings. Because when I saw the Kim Kardashian thing, we're going right into hot topics.
Yeah.
The level of tone deafness, judgment, smugness, and privilege it takes. To, in the words of, I forgot who said it, but I was on another podcast with Bridget and Mandy, and they mentioned it, to start at third base.
Yeah, man.
And pontificate about a home run.
And then within a week, have
everybody who work for you call bullshit.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the folks who can't get in the park, you're waving a finger at them.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even get in the park
Yeah.
to even be on a base.
Yeah.
But you started towards the end and you want to say, you bitches don't want to work.
Yeah. So I've been changing my language. I don't talk about privilege anymore. I talk about power. And that, like, actually when we're talking about privilege, it's really a conversation about power. We're talking about people with a lot of power. Like, and I've made this whole scale on it. And
well, here's the thing that I have a question then. If you're differentiating privilege and power, I'm surrounded by people who are powerful, but because of a lack of privilege, they still can't get access. So what do you call that gap when you're...
I actually think it's a lack of power.
But they're still Black.
Yes. Like, there are places where we do not, where people of color...
Who are filthy rich still can't get in.
Filthy rich.
Yeah.
Still don't have power.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't want to grapple with that because some of the ways in which, and like, I can speak about this as a Latinx person from my community, right? Like, I have done coaching with people who celebrities with like power, who one struggle to reckon with the power that they do have, right?
But at the fact that they can't buy their way into whiteness.
Yes.
Because that's what's interesting to me is I think watching when I lived in DC and working in like inner city communities and disenfranchised folks, I understood their power dynamics and how they felt disempowered.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you come to LA and you're in these rooms with people who are technically billionaires complaining that they can't even, now that they have the money, they still can't buy their way into certain spaces because they're still going to be black or brown or whatever they are. You know what I mean? And that's kind of jarring because it also, and this is a question I've asked a couple of times of people that's made me like get cussed out. So I always ask this, particularly of men of color. Mm-hmm. Do you really want freedom or do you just want your turn at being the oppressor?
Listen.
Because a lot of times, folks who think they can buy their way into the room are trying to get away from the rest of us. Yeah. So did you want us all to be free or did you just want to get into the room and leave us behind?
I mean, of course, they just wanted to get into the room. Like, I think that we mistake getting into the room with freedom.
Yes. You can still be like the help in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't understand when that happens. And like, listen, there is complexity here, right? Mm-hmm. Our people think we have more power than we do. Mm-hmm. And then we're clear.
Why hasn't Jay-Z made the NFL stop being racist? One black man from New York is going. One black man from New York, no matter how much money he has and who his wife is not going to suddenly by himself make the sports organization that is the most like a plantation. Literally, there's overseers and like black mandingos running around while people are trading money, and none of them get to own any. Like, it's literally a modern day plantation. One black man, not even Hove, can buy his way into that.
Now, I think that there is analysis to be done about, like, I mean, there are no heroes under a capitalist sun, right? None. Everyone is making.
He's not above reproach.
He's not above reproach.
It's impossible for him to fix it.
But he cannot fix it, right?
And I think look at Barack Obama as the president. Yeah.
And he still couldn't fix it, right?
Still couldn't fix it,
right? It's like that's where I think we don't understand the systemic and structural parts. Mm-hmm. And so then when we're trying to play a role in fixing it, we're not clear on like the strategic thing that we're doing in that moment, and whether or not that strategy is to open the door further or to get ourselves in the door further. And because we don't, like, once you get to that level of success, I really think it just starts snowballing, right? And so you're like, let me get in the next room, let me get in the next room. And
let me leave this back door open and that window open. And it's so weird for me when people were talking crap about the Obama administration. And I had lived in DC at the time, so I was constantly going for press. And the last like month that he was president before Trump took over, that was a bitter month for all of us.
Oh, man.
So many press releases came out to us about he was freeing as many people that he could. Anybody in jail with a dime bag that he could find or whatever, he was just like, get out, get out, get out. Yeah. And so watching the president act like Harriet Tubman, trying to free random people of color before he knew the Antichrist was taking over, shows you that he understood, like, yo,
these are the
shit's about to get real.
And the calculus that he was making every single day, that like, there is enough freedom that I could give that would pull me out of this, and the good that I could do would be done. Right. Yeah. And like, that's listen, and I do not absolve him of the power he inherited in the legacy of the role that he had. But I also think we lack a realism about the limits to the power we are allowed.
It's physically impossible to work hard and become a billionaire. It's also physically impossible to be the first black president without having to play politics.
That's absolutely right.
And so people keep asking for things that are physically impossible, right? And so the same people who thought Barack Obama should have been able to fix everything in one term as a black man.
Yeah.
Are the same folks who suddenly understand how ridiculous it is that Kim Kardashian says work harder. Yeah. Where was that nuance when you were throwing tomato at him? You know what I mean? So I'm just like, it's always so funny to me how the logic never changes, but we just pick and choose when we apply it. And we know we're both Tauruses. I feel like I've had a lot of Tauruses in the show. Whenever I'm going through a transition, I'm like, where are the earth signs? I need to be held. I just need to be held. And I was wondering the week of power. And it's so funny that you mentioned power, because that word is a word that I have a love-hate relationship with. Yeah. Because it comes so easily to me. I always know I'm going to be in trouble because I'm supposed to be disempowered. Yeah. And I think whenever you're a powerful woman, you know, I overheard you one time. I had just started working at our old employer. I'm not going to shout them out. I just refuse
better
to.
For them.
Yeah, it's better for them because we have stories. Yeah. And it was you and Rachel and someone else, and you guys were turning the corner, and I had walked behind you. I don't think you had realized it. And you guys were talking about, and I was like, this is perfect. I get to hear the new people, like the people talk about me as the new girl. And then you were like, you said something to the effect of, she's like a force of nature. And I was like, oh, I don't even, is this tea or not? I don't even know what to do with this, because I was like a tornado?
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where it was interesting when you hear someone talking about you when they don't think you're around. There's a purity to that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then a couple of months later, we had that professional development thing, and we had to do anonymous pep talks to each other. And I recognized your handwriting, and yours was, I hope that one day you can relax into your power. Those two moments were bookended for me, though, because at the moment I was a force of nature, but I hadn't relaxed into my power yet.
Yeah.
And that note that you sent me became like a call, like a challenge to me. Like, I'm gonna find a place where I can relax into my power, like where I can feel not feel guilty about how much space I take up.
Yeah,
so I wanted to like thank you and give you your flowers for that, because sometimes we pour into people and it's a throwaway because we're constantly pouring.
Yeah.
We got Taurus problems.
Yeah.
We're constantly pouring to everybody, right? And then it's not until you meet somebody who is hella parched, you're like, oh shit, there is value in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to segue into the next hot topic, because I feel like we've already explained why Kim Kardashian said a very woefully oversimplified thing
ridiculous
that she needs to never say again.
because she ain't never had no power a day in her life.
So the school mask mandates have been lifted. You mentioned earlier, for those who don't know you like I do, that you spent a year in bed. That's because of COVID, and you had long COVID. A lot of folks do not understand long COVID.
Yeah.
Every time someone says, well, not everybody dies from COVID, I said, there's other things other than dying that suck.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Dying is not the only bad case scenario when you have it, right? So now that the CDC is saying that, people don't need masks anymore, and all you gotta do is spray some Windex on it and it'll go away. Like, I don't know what's happening over there. Poor Dr. Fauci. I feel so bad for him. Not that they're saying walk the block and walk it off and wait 30 minutes like a hard meal. How do you feel? I can't imagine. I'm already having freakouts.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like for you.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what long COVID is and how it feels for someone with long COVID to watch the rest of us say, well, I'm tired of COVID, so it's over?
Yeah. I am. So I got sick with COVID on March 13th, 2020.
Like, damn, that's...
the day of shelter in place in California.
And
damn. There was already community spread happening, and no one had told us, right? And in order to get tested, you had to have had contact with someone from Italy or China, as if community spread hadn't been happening, right?
You got it from the gate.
The gate. And then I spent 2 months with what I would call acute COVID. So that was like, I had fevers between like 99.9 and 102.3 for 2 months.
For those who don't know anything about math or health, that's like being the human equivalent of a honey baked ham.
Yeah,
like, that's like hot.
For that long, absolutely. And then of course the breathing, the oxygen, like all of that. Like there were 2 times in that time frame where I thought genuinely like I'm gonna die. And
oh my God, Karla,
I wrote letters to everybody. I was like, if I don't make it out of here, I just want to I wrote in the places where it was like a community. I wrote a letter to a community of the individuals. I wrote letters to individuals, probably like 25, 26, I think, something like that, letters that I wrote at that time.
Oh my gosh.
And then once the fever ended, after the second time I was in the hospital, then I still didn't get better. I was having like shocks of pain in my calves, my abdomen, my chest.
Were you ever worried that people weren't going to take you seriously because technically if you're not diagnosed anymore or it's a negative test and it's all in your head?
They didn't.
Because folks like to tell you things are in your head.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and let me tell you, being a plus size Latina in that environment.
Go on a diet, the COVID will go away.
Yes.
Because doctors think that's the answer to everything.
So I've found out since, right, that there's something called MECFS, myoencephalitis chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a big symptom in long COVID. That means like if you go past the amount of energy you have to give, it will pull you back into bed, right?
Like a battery pack that's gone empty.
Right. That's right. And then it is like, well, we don't trust you with your battery pack, as your body's saying, and there are a lot of thoughts as to why that might be happening. This was happening to people before long COVID, and that community, the MECFS community, was telling people this is going to be a problem after COVID. Right. Some people are going to have post-viral illnesses, and no one listened to them. And then we found each other online. People who were not getting better were like, and this is where I'm like, the internet changed power. Mm-hmm. Because we could gather, we could push.
Y'all could snitch in public. Like, look, they lying to all of y'all.
That's right. That's right. And so we did, and and started to find out that this was a thing. Long COVID was a thing. And then groups of us organized and pushed the World Health Organization and the CDC to recognize it because insurance companies were not covering.
How long did it take for long COVID to be coined and to be acknowledged?
Yeah, I would say at about May, June of the pandemic, around there. I'd have to take a look at the real date, but it was like around the May, June arena because I knew that after June it got a lot less complex. I mean, though I still went to cardiologists that were like, "You just deconditioned and you need to work out." And I'm like, listen, before COVID, I was a weightlifter.
Oh, let's just say before COVID, Karla was out here living her #fit life.
Yeah.
I was seeing your posts. I was like, oh, she's getting it. So like, it's weird that people always say, first of all, I have a question about that. People who say, oh, he died of COVID, but he was sickly. Pause for a second. What you're saying is people who are not in perfect health deserve to die.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think folks realize how fucked up that is.
So many ways in which folks are like, oh, well, if
she had allergies. So, I mean, of course she died. I'm like, do you understand that people who are imperfect, which is all humans, by the way, deserve to live? Like,
and 45% of people in the country have an undiagnosed autoimmune disease. So you may randomly be saying you should die.
Yeah. I'm like, your eyes you look a little ashen and crusty to be talking like that. You probably got something. Like, it makes me so sad how when we talk about things like the Holocaust or stuff like that, and we'll be like, Hitler wanted these perfect people and he was a villain or whatever. Yeah. But now we're all acting like mini Hitlers. And I'm going to be provocative in saying this and acting like if you're not perfect, you don't deserve to be loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Social media has made us our own little dictators about what's acceptable and what's not. And COVID was a really jarring reminder of how quickly people will throw you away as long as they're fine. Yeah. Folks who were hesitant about COVID and who were being mindful, if they got it and survived it, became callous.
Yeah.
Because now it doesn't affect me anymore. Now that I know that I run Russian roulette, I'm not going to die.
Girl, I had family members who swore that lemon tea was the cure for COVID.
Oh, honey,
right?
Wow. That could be a Latin thing. Wait a minute.
Right. It was so bad.
Some ginger and some oregano oil, and you would be just good.
I was like, if that were the case, there would be many rich people right now.
Many.
But like, and then just a lot of skepticism on my own illness. I mean, I was really lucky. My nuclear family, like my mom, my dad, my brother, were all like ride or die, right? Like literally, in those moments. But I think in order to we don't have control. And like, I mean, people like us, we get that we don't have control and we're walking around this world.
We made peace with it, whatever.
And yes, the blessings come and the tidal wave of pain comes sometimes. And these are things we don't have control of. But most people don't understand they have no control. And for the people who don't understand that, they try to come up with the reason. Like the biggest parallel I can think of is the experiences I had when I was assaulted. And like people trying to figure out how you got assaulted so that they can make a judgment about why they wouldn't get assaulted because they're smarter than you are.
It's a superiority thing that is very condescending.
Oh, for sure.
Like, oh, well, what did you say to him though? Were you worried? Well, why did you walk down that alley?
Yeah.
Do you understand that if I walk buck naked down an alley, I still don't deserve to be raped, right?
Absolutely.
There's no
That's
scenario.
absolutely.
I was talking to a male friend about this, and I was talking to him about the importance of holding space rather than rushing to a solution, right?
Yeah.
A solution is valid. Of course, we want solutions, but holding space means that what happens to me mattered.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks rush to solutions because they want to feel better.
Yeah.
Because we want to think there's good guys and bad guys. Sometimes there's a lot of gray, fucked up shit in the middle.
Absolutely. Most of it is gray.
Most of it is gray. Yeah, I think that's why we also have to make celebrities into villains or superheroes too, right? Because it's clean that way. Because if your fave is also problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is making me think about why we need more people of color who are gatekeepers, because a lot of times those metrics about what's acceptable and what's not are done by people who can't even read the room. It's making me think about, I have this down and I don't want to skip this. Ketanji Brown Jackson is making history today, right? Like it's all over. I've been retweeting. It's really beautiful. I feel so bad for everybody on my timeline. I've been retweeting the crap out of it. She will rise. And during her opening statement to the Supreme Court confirmation hearing, she said, a thank you to her parents who were married for 54 years. Yeah. Her parents were married for 54 years. Wow. And she also thanked her husband of 25 years, Dr. Patrick Jackson. And she said, and I quote, "I have no doubt without him by my side from the very beginning at this incredible professional journey, none of this would have been possible."
Do you realize the level of negotiation you have to understand how to do to be in a relationship for 25 and 54 years?
5 and 54 years. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's Women's Month. That's why I booked you to be this month. I was like, who are the badass women that I know? And I was thinking to myself about the conversation that you and I have had about being powerful versus being lovable, and how those are often treated like they're at odds.
Oh, listen.
So conversely, this is going to be a compare and contrast. She's saying 54, 25, all these wonderful years. Last week, a man went viral for saying women who make more than me are disqualified.
Oh, God.
You see those two narratives, right?
Oh, yeah.
We see Ketanji, we want to be power couples like Ketanji and her family, but then we see these men who are saying, if you make more than me, you're disqualified. What has it been like, and this is a very light question, what has it been like for you dating as a powerful woman?
Listen, everything up before this year has been like, I've been talking to you about the fact that I've been in my first like really healthy relationship.
That's a big deal. Some people die never being in a healthy relationship.
I'm like, even if it doesn't work out, at least I know what this was like for
I'll let you know when it's my turn.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten there yet, but watching you has been great.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's I think it's really hard. Like there is this, like, unfortunately, like one of the things that actually my partner said to me once, because I was doing a presentation about, like, I was like, masculinity is killing everything. And then he was like, hey, like his son is trans. And so he was like, watching them embrace their masculinity has been beautiful, right? Like patriarchy is messed up. And I was like, oh, I am duly checked, right?
But isn't that lovely that you can have a partner who, instead of shutting down and feeling small and then making you pay for it passively later, called it out and let you address it in the moment?
Oh, I mean, we've talked
about
you
are in a healthy relationship. I have no idea what that feels like.
I told one of the things we said, if either of us had lesser of an ego than we do, it would not work.
Yeah.
Right? Because one person would run over the other person, right?
But here's the thing though, is it ego or is it confidence and boundaries? Because I took a test recently, and the reason why I'm calling out the ego thing is I think people would think I have a lot of ego. And I've taken all these tests. There's one called Human Design. I've taken all these different tests.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
And every single test I take, and this is always funny when somebody else is with me and hearing the results, it always says that I don't have a big ego. People are like, this bitch doesn't have a big ego. How loud she is. And I'm always pushed back like, no, the ego's only job is to protect what is weakened or compromised, right? Sure. I'm the kind of person where I self-advocate not from ego, but from a sense of right and wrong.
That's right.
So I'm not advocating because I need to be right. I'm advocating because this feels like it's wrong in general.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think people don't understand the nuance of wanting to do what's right versus needing to feel like you are right.
Yeah.
Which is a huge distinction that I had to learn to make for people that I've dated. Like, if we have an argument and if I find out that you're right, I'll concede. But if you're wrong, you got me fucked up. We're going to keep on pretending like you're not wrong.
Yeah, man. It's like, I think confidence and boundaries is right. And we've got a robust conversation about confidence and boundaries.
Oh, I can imagine because you have the verbiage.
Yeah.
Like, Karla will drown you in some verbiage. Yeah. And this over here, 0.5B.
Yeah, listen. I got frameworks for the frameworks.
And you're a Taurus dating a Libra too, so we have similar problems.
Yeah. It's like before him, I would say that the toughest part is that when the person that you are in relationship with does not have the confidence and boundaries, they look at your confidence and boundaries as a threat rather than as an invitation to join you.
That is a quotable.
Right.
Pew, 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 pew. I need to get sound effects for the show. This is the exact moment. Can you repeat that? Because that was a fucking word. Oh my God.
They look at confidence and boundaries as a threat instead of an invitation to join you.
It's an invitation. Like, I'm empowered. You want some too?
Yeah. Well, and so many of us haven't really spent time thinking through what we believe. We crib our beliefs off of other people. Like, we outsource our beliefs to that celebrity, that politician, that like talking point, right? Like, we heard a thing, even homie who just went viral. He did not hear that. He did not make that up. He heard that somewhere and like repurposed it.
Yeah.
And then utilized it as a way, and like, listen, there is data that says that we are less likely to find men. Yes. Right. But that data does not mean that the reason we are not finding men is because we are educated, powerful, or have a good salary. The reason we aren't finding men is because they are weak.
And
there's weakness.
There's well, it's socialized weakness, right?
Absolutely.
Because fragile masculinity is taught, it's socialized too. And it's always interesting to me where when I feel like I'm a unicorn, you're a unicorn. Statistically speaking, we should not be existing in the lives that we're living.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm already atypical, why would I not continue to think that I might be the exception if I'm constantly being the exception to all these fucked up rules that you guys have created for me? And I also think too, I get really nervous around men. You guys know I'm pansexual. I have started dating men more rigorously since I moved to LA. I forgot how fragile they were. Whew. I forgot.
It's rough, man. You gotta.
These two lesbians had me spoiled for a second. I forgot.
Gotta be looking into the San Gabriel Valley because LA proper is a whole other thing.
Carla, there were a couple of times I was like, am I going back to women? Because this is a lie.
This is a lie.
No, this is like, oh, so your feelings are hurt about that thing from 3 weeks ago that was, and here's, you know what the thing is? It's my issue is not with men. I love men. I love humans, right?
Absolutely.
My issue is with fragile masculinity, which can also exist in lesbians.
Yeah.
So wherever I find it, I'm not for it, right?
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of guys who have convinced themselves of the new minority.
Yeah.
In a patriarchal society, I promise you're getting your feelings hurt because you can't keep up, even though the game was rigged for you to win. Yeah. That's not you being disempowered. That's you not figuring out how to win. And the funny thing is, I think, like, I have a friend a long time ago. He lived next door to our job. I lived an hour away. I was always on time. He was always late. Because I was so far and I knew I was starting behind, I had to be more mindful about my commute. Because he lived next door, he could be mindless and he was constantly failing. And I think that's what I think about when I think about men who are now being fragile and acting like incels. This was already stacked in your favor. And so there's a lack of mindfulness that you weren't taught mindfulness because you didn't have to be mindful. All these women behind you who were disenfranchised, couldn't even vote, needed a husband just to get a bank loan, they figured out how to get up earlier because they knew they were starting behind.
And let's be clear, there's a disinformation campaign to recruit them.
Oh, hell yeah.
Right? Like there are
bots trying to make men hate women right now.
Absolutely. No question. Like they are looking at the place where they can create like space to pull you away into like a culty little behavior, right? And there is underground.
It's worse than ISIS.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I have a lot of guy friends. I'm starting to think I have guy friends because I'm supposed to deprogram them. One of my good guy friends sent me a video of a man saying, you know, men are the only people in the world who are only loved for what they can provide. They're not loved for who they are, and they kill themselves 3 times more than women do. And we're just providers or nothing else. You guys don't see us as humans. We can't have feelings. Bullshit. Because women, we probably don't kill ourselves as much because y'all kill us before we get to ourselves. Let's be really, really, statistically speaking, women are more likely to be killed when they're pregnant by their lover than by a complete stranger, right? And also, too, all the things you're complaining about, how being a provider is the only thing you're known for, y'all created that with patriarchy. So my thing is, you cannot create this fucked up system. And instead of being mad at other men for creating the fucked up system, be mad at the people who are being like the most maligned by it. And so I wrote him back an email and I said, hey, love, I love that you sent me this video. I hope you don't feel similarly, because the problem with this video is men who do not know how to hold space for their feelings start to make nonsensical statements like this in a silo, and nobody's around to tell them that they're not making sense.
Yeah, man.
Like it makes me sad. So for you dating, how do you navigate the fragilities? Because all men have masculine, all men are spoon-fed. So all the guys who are watching, you're not bad people.
No.
Society has spoon-fed this to you. But how do you tell a masculine person, nah, I think you might have gotten this wrong, and without getting broken up with?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that that's, for me at least, the choice that I've made at this point in my life. Like, I always think it's really interesting to me that I was deadlifting 220 pounds and being like, you know, and going and traveling
this little flex
to places like Iguazu Falls, and I was not having a good dating life.
You were very single, but also very adventurous.
I was very adventurous, right? And then the minute that but like COVID humbled me quite a bit in terms of like
thinking you're gonna die.
Yeah, thinking that
anybody.
And it opened me up to letting my people love me, right? And I don't mean just men. I mean, like, I let you love on me. I let all of my friends love on me. Like, people were sending me things, giving me groceries. You know, like, people were taking care of me. In order for me to survive COVID, I had to let people take care of me.
You have to learn how to receive.
That's right. And that learning was critical, I think. And even though COVID made me gain a ton of weight and put me in a really bad health position and everything, like, the gifts that it did give me was like letting me learn how to receive. And that opened me up to my partner, right? And I was clear though that when I started dating again, that I was like, yeah, I don't actually have room or space for the people who are not going to be in a give and take with me. That are like, understand that this is a both, like this is both of us.
It's sexy when the thirst is mutual.
That's right, you know.
So basically, you being more supple is what. So basically, you probably were saying the same things you would have said previously, but the you that was saying it probably was delivering it.
It's really different.
Energetically, the words could have been the same, but the energy felt different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is a good segue for the next conversation I wanted to have, was because I intentionally had that conversation about men, because now I want to flip it to women.
Yeah.
Did you not believe humans are humans?
Yes.
And I hate gender wars. A lot of women would have listened to the last 10 minutes and said, yeah, Blue, fragile masculinity sucks.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, a lot of women get so hardened by that, we don't know how to receive feedback.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to receive it all.
Yeah.
So what did you have to unlearn as a strong woman to be loved properly?
Yeah.
Because the unlearning is the thing that nobody ever tells women, that, hey, okay, men might be all these things and they have all these things to learn, but they can't always be wrong.
Yeah.
And you also have something that you need to learn. And a lot of strong women I know don't know how to receive feedback.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, I think it's the same coin, right? So like the thing that we were talking about before and this thing are the same thing. The learning how to receive feedback. You know, they'll do 100 trainings about how to give feedback, but no one ever does trainings about how to receive it.
Talk about it. Because some of the most critically thinking, amazing people, you tell them anything that's not perfect, they turn into a 5-year-old.
Yeah, man.
You just let a workshop, but you can't take feedback.
Yeah.
Talk about it, Karla.
Well, I mean, and it's like our value has to be more, like, you always know where you get your value as a human when feedback comes, right? So like, and then like, listen, I'm not perfect. I definitely am, like, I have, I've been an activist. I do a lot of work with people. I'm usually the most emotionally intelligent person in a room. Like if someone challenges those parts of me that I hold so dear, it takes me a second to pull back and be like,
that's ego. That's where ego shows up.
That's right.
That's where that is pure ego.
Right. And like, and I don't care how evolved you get, you still have those attachments.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I need a day or I need an hour to come back and like really consider this. Right. And I think that part of, I'm like a self-cleaning oven sometimes, but
you're the only other person I know who uses that analogy. I fucks with you.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm always like, I'm a self-cleaning oven. I'm gonna mess it up, but I'm gonna fix it afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. But like part of that is there's nothing that a person says to me that I'm not going to consider. Right. Like, and there is, and a friend of mine, Mimi, once is just like, you always got to think about like, what's the grain in, like, it may be that 90% of what someone said to you is horseshit. Am I allowed to say horseshit?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This is a grown-up podcast. Humans cuss.
Yeah. Mimi's always like, or it's like 90% of what a person says could be horseshit, but that little 10% may be something that you got to look at, right?
That nugget.
And
it keeps showing up like a pebble in your shoe until you pay attention to it.
That's absolutely right. And I would be lying if I didn't say that letting myself be loved was not a nugget that showed up for most of my life. Right.
It
was the lesson, like it was the lesson that popped up in every single stage.
Like, chill out and just let the love happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to work for it. Like,
you talk about struggle love, because we all believe that, like, if it's, we have to work for the love and this, that, and the other. I will say this though. A lot of times we ask for stuff without making room for it to show up. Because I remember there was a time where I was in DC and there was this person that I liked and they worked in my neighborhood. And I said, it's Monday. I'm going to manifest them calling me by Friday. So every day I would like do my, I'm Buddhist. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I would like I could just see you showing up to my door. And every day I tried to manifest it. On Friday, I got a call saying, hey, for some reason you've been on my mind since Monday. And I was like, yeah. Yes, you have. And then he was like, so I'm in your neighborhood. Can I come over? And I was about to say yes until I looked around and realized I hadn't cleaned my house. I spent all week manifesting.
And did not do the prep
but didn't create the environment for this motherfucker to come over. And so with the heaviest heart, I was like, actually, no, can't because it looks like a disaster area. Like,
yeah.
and so that always stuck with me. Like, I did all this praying but didn't
So
make room for it.
metaphysical, man. So metaphysical.
When I tell you the universe, and
Yeah.
to this day, I always think that we would have probably gotten together had that happened. This person went on vacation and met somebody there. And they got together instead.
Yeah.
When I got the wedding invitation, I wanted to flip a table. I was like, if I had just go in my house, you would have came over, realized that was the one.
Yeah.
What the fuck? But that always stopped me moving forward. Whenever I do something and I pray for something,
I
the
better
very
be
next thing is
myself
to
ready.
make room for it to show up. Because a lot of
right.
folks ask for love, and then when love shows up, they throw up all over it because they don't know where to put it. So I guess my thing is like, what's the thing that you miss the most about being single? Because we always act like being in a relationship is the only good case scenario. They both have good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the planning on my own. Like when
Oh,
it's like when I'm
be your
looking
own
at my
boss.
month. Yeah, it's like when I'm looking at my month and I'm looking at the calendar, I can't be like, this is the weekend we are going to hang out together. This is the weekend that we're not. This is the week that we're going to do this. I actually have to negotiate that with another human that is 3-dimensional and like, you know, and
And
that
has
sounds
quirks
so
that might not
simple.
make sense to you.
Yes, absolutely, right. And that may seem simple, but it's not. Like, and
I mean, autonomy is not simple.
Listen.
That's a big thing to miss is your complete autonomy.
Tell you. So in 2017, I got a dog. And the reason I got a dog is that an ex came to visit in December of 2016. And I was concerned at how annoyed I was at how many times I had to do something that he wanted to do versus something that I wanted to do.
Being single will do that to you.
And I was like, oh, dang, I've been running this life only considering me for a really long time. I need to do something. And so I got a dog.
No, it tracks. Karla, that makes total fucking sense to me. It's the reason why I have so many guy friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, if I'm going to actually end up with one of y'all, I need to be annoyed with y'all now and figure out how to work through that. So when my husband shows up, I already know how to do with man stuff. It totally makes all the fucking sense in the world.
Then I was like, I had to go walk a doggy that had its own pee-pee schedule and had its own, like, it had its own internal set of needs that I had to negotiate and honor and prep for and plan around. And like,
Is your dog Guatemalan?
No.
I feel like whatever race you are, you're like ethnicity you are. I'm gonna call my dog that.
Moxie.
My dog is black. I don't even have a dog yet. But
No, Moxie's Guaxican. Moxie's Guaxican.
That sounds like a bomb ass drink that I would order. That's hilarious. No, seriously, like when you have a pet, you're right. It does keep you supple.
Yeah.
It's all about finding ways to keep your heart supple.
Yeah,
We had
absolutely.
a Valentine's episode where one of my favorite couples came, and Adrienne Muse, she's one of the people in the couple, and she said she advised me to give up on looking for love.
Yeah.
She's been happily married for 10 years. And that seems like counterintuitive. She was like, and I was like, and the minute she said that, because I know that she's very spiritual, I was like, are you about to reference the law of detachment?
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, I was like, oh God, here we go. For those who don't know, the law of detachment is a less fun side of The Secret that nobody talks about. We talk about the law of attraction all the time. We don't talk about the law of detachment. We don't talk about how when you want to attract something, you have to trust it enough to let it go and not be attached to it.
Well, you know this about power too.
Yeah. I can do it with power. I can renege power all day long. But when it comes to fixing,
Listen.
because I think being of service is something I'm so proud of, because that's the ego thing, right? I tell people all the time, everything you do has an incentive, even if it's noble.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though I love the high I get, watching people be empowered with tools I give them to fix their lives, I love that I had the toolkit to hand to them.
Absolutely.
That's still about me. I tell people
Yeah.
all the time, none of this is selfless. So like, the law of detachment is very hard for a lot of people. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's hard for me at like a 4 now.
Yeah.
Used to be like an 8.
Yeah.
If you would tell me to detach, I would get like roid rage. I would get mad.
Yeah.
Detach, I don't even have enough. Like, I would get angry. How good do you think you are at asking and then detaching from the control freak urge to watch it and micromanage it while you're waiting for the universe to work its magic?
In progress, yo.
I'm at a 4. It's hard for me at a 4. How hard is it for you at a 1 to 10?
I'm probably at a 5 or 6 at this point. No, more like 5 probably.
With long COVID, I would have been like an 8. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I actually
Because
think
long COVID would have
is
made
the
me
one that did it.
would have made me clench up a little bit.
Well,
I think.
I mean, I think so. I would say the first 6 months of long COVID definitely did that to me.
Yeah.
And accepting that I had a disability and that and a chronic illness.
Oh, those words have so much weight to them.
Yeah.
Especially when you're proud of how autonomous and badass you are.
Listen,
and then like swipes you down and makes you sit down.
I have been doing social change work my whole life, and you know, it's like the understanding of, like, I think I had a transition in my accomplice path with the LGBTQIA community when I stopped seeing like gay, lesbian, trans rights as something that I was like, I love folks in those communities. I'm gonna be there for them all the time. And then I had a transition where all of a sudden I was like, oh no, actually, I believe I get to own my femininity at whatever level I want to. And freedom for me means they get to own their femininity at whatever level they want to, and their masculinity at whatever level they want to. And my freedom is tied up in their freedom, right? Similarly,
it stopped being othered. Like it was like, oh, we're human beings that
are connected. Yeah. This injustice prevents me from living my best life.
Yeah.
You know, even if I'm not a part of a community, right?
Isn't there a quote about that? Like, when I saw them take it away from so and so, I said nothing. When I saw them take it away from somebody else, I said nothing. And then one day it was my turn. Like, I feel like whenever you let injustice happen, eventually it's going to be your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say I had a similar transition in terms of disability justice, where I was, before I was disabled, I was like, I want to make things accessible for people, and I want to give folks that, and then I had to understand that true disability justice was divorcing my relationship between my productivity and my value.
You wanted to be a human being, not a human doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Child. Cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yeah.
The whole human being versus human doing thing.
Yeah.
COVID brought that out so much because everybody was like, if you don't start a business and become a billionaire by the end of this, what were you doing? Surviving? The fuck? Yeah. Like, what? What the fuck? Why do I have to start a business during a pandemic?
I hear that. And like, I'm like, oh baby, that's like you, the last grasp of the productivity. Like you're like, I
hate those memes. This young lady started $1 million business using a $10 refund check from the government. That's wonderful for her. What the fuck does that have to do with me?
So great that you can make sourdough bread and like
right. Oh my God. She grew a farm. That's wonderful. I grabbed my mail today and actually opened it in time.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The whole thing with like busyness and productivity, I think the counter movement to push back against that, thank God it's happening.
Yeah.
There's something called the nap ministry.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I love that because I love me a good nap.
Yeah.
So I love that there's a whole ministry to back that
Rest.
up. I'm going to ask you a question that's actually not, I'm going to go rogue. It's not on the itinerary. As much as I make this show conversational, I always have an itinerary. You know how we do.
Listen.
We make things look conversational, but the whole time we got notes.
There's structure.
But this is something that actually happened to me last Thursday on St. Patrick's Day when I went home. And I haven't talked about it to anybody but the folks who were there. So you're going to be the first person to hear about it that wasn't actually there.
Bring it.
A friendship of several years came to an end last year. So this is my first time in my entire life past the age of 12. No, since the age of 5. I've had a best friend.
Sorry,
not having a best
tough.
friend. So I've had a best friend since I was 5.
Oh.
So it was one of those things where I'm clear enough where the way I was dishonored made it a clean break for me. Because I was like, nobody who belongs in my life would treat me like that, right?
Yeah.
So the break was actually clean. This is where things get messy. I thought the break was clean. It's been whatever. I go back home for St. Patty's Day and see my childhood friends who've known me since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
They've known me longest than anybody next to my mother. I tell them about the friendship breakup and they're all devastated. I'm fine because I'm stoic and I was like, no, it was so dishonorable. I had to go and I'm proud of myself. It wasn't until I made a mention about how I was perceived in high school that I saw the looks on their faces and they were like, what are you talking about? So this is what happened. I was like, I know in high school I was a raging bitch and nobody liked me. So it's really sweet that you guys are showing me. They were like, what the fuck are you talking about? You were super popular. I was like, wait, no. Yeah. I was a raging bitch and nobody.
I have a similar. I thought I was a nerd.
I thought all these horrible things. And then they were like, who the fuck told you that? They were like, Blue, we all have husbands and kids. Why the hell would we all leave our husbands and our kids at home on a Thursday? We have work tomorrow.
Or an angry,
just to come see this horrible bitch that nobody liked in high school. Who told you that? And then I said, well, this person who I just ended my friendship with, our friendship started with them telling me, hey, nobody likes you, but I like you. And the whole friendship was predicated on me making penance for what a horrible person I was in high school. And for 25 years, I took his word for it that I was a shitty person in high school. The work that I currently do and the hyper thoughtfulness I have is quietly me making penance for this monster that I was in high school. And so for me for me to go back and find out that somebody had planted a false memory in my head and that the people who were actually there were like, no, you weren't.
Yeah.
And then I started saying, you're right. Because when I would throw birthday parties, everybody would show up. So if I was so horrible, why my parties were popping? If I was so horrible, why people like, and suddenly I was realizing that I had been groomed. I don't think he did it intentionally, right?
No,
People in pain sometimes do things. I think he
instinctually.
thought that I was a popular girl who he thought was a bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
But what was jarring for me was I teach classes and workshops about grooming, about how the first step of grooming is to isolate you.
Yeah.
And I teach all the steps of grooming, not realizing I had quietly been groomed unintentionally, perhaps, by someone who I thought was my closest friend.
Yeah.
And so it's jarring sometimes to realize that what you think of yourself isn't your thoughts.
Yeah.
Somebody planted a seed, you trusted them and you never questioned it, right? Have you, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is I know that we've both had some like rude awakenings about who we are and who we could be in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where you trusted someone's perception of you and then later realize, I don't think that's actually me. I think that's how you perceive me, but I don't think that's actually a version of me.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that cognitive dissonance?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think...
Because we're really willing to take feedback. That's one thing I would say for both of us. If we love you, we want your feedback.
For sure. It's I'm a tender human. Like, I'm vulnerable as hell. I'm quick to cry. Like, if it's, it's like, and cry happy, cry sad, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
you are.
I'm the same,
so I shouldn't be looking at you. I'm looking at you like, oh, you poor thing. Like, bitch, you the same way. Yes, we are.
And, I mean, but it takes a certain amount of strength to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that being yourself, I mean, we started out talking about being ourselves in every environment, and being yourself in every environment takes a certain amount of strength.
Yeah.
Like, you're not performing for the people that you're not performing for men, you're not performing for whiteness, you're not performing for better jobs.
You just want to be the best you could be and figure out what the fuck that looks
Yeah.
like.
And there, of course, have been stages to that, right?
Right.
Like, me at 25, different than me now, right?
Yeah,
like,
shut up. Me at 25 can shut up right
now.
now.
And I mean, we were probably like 20 something.
Yeah, we were like, we were still in our 20s
when we met.
But you also think that if you're good to folks, like, oh, if I love upon you, of course, if you give me feedback, it has to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. But that vulnerability has caused people will have some mad, crazy reactions to me, like wild, right? Like, folks, I remember when I got my the job for CEO at my last organization.
This next flex, I love when you talk your shit. I love the last time I was popping. Of the many times that I be popping.
It's not a flex.
No, I love it. We like flexes here. It's a flex.
Okay,
on that shit.
Okay, it's a flex. I remember someone said to me that I had to decide whether or not I wanted to be Huey P. Newton or Cory Booker.
Oh, that's a weird menu.
First of all,
those are the options.
First of all, I'm Latina,
right? Like, where are we going with this?
Like, I'm a Latin woman, right? So, and then
let's say, do you want to be David Duke or Colin Powell?
Right?
Neither.
Yeah. Right? Like, but I was like, I think that takes the humanity away from both of those leaders.
Yeah.
One, right? And two, I refuse to choose, right? Like, it's not, and like folks wrote letters to the board about how I would ruin the organization.
Why? What was the premise?
Because I was too emotional to run it.
Because
women wrote women said that to board members.
Well, internalized sexism is a thing. Yeah.
Listen, right? And I think that when you hold yourself with a certain amount of vulnerability, and folks who like do a lot of self-protection come up against you, like, the story that people tell themselves when they're very protected is that they have to be because the world is too cruel. And if they are not protected, then they're going to be hurt. And then they watch you step into the room without that kind of baggage.
And they think something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that bitch is weird. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I think a lot of time, the person who I'm talking about was constantly protecting himself and constantly living in secret and shame.
Yeah.
And me just being proud to exist.
Yeah.
He was like, well, you don't think people are going to have a problem with that? You don't think people are going to, like, and I was like, or maybe not. But then I realized, like, I was like, for someone who's so hated for being the way I am, why are people always in my house? Like, but here's the thing though, right? I love about what you're saying, that people don't see the world as it is. They see it as they are. What is that? A nice quote. And it's interesting how a paranoid person, of course, is going to be paranoid about you being free.
Yeah.
So have you ever had to walk away from a friendship because the fruit was coming from the poison tree? Have you ever had to say, your inability to see me clearly is fucking this up for us?
I mean, I think probably in the first part of my 20s, I think I've had a real gift at picking the right people for friends. What I wasn't
Now.
able to,
Because I picked this person at like 14.
Yes,
so 14-year-old
yes.
me is who chose
like, listen,
the conundrum that I currently find
but
myself
I'll say,
in.
like, I have friends who are high school friends and middle school friends,
Mhm.
in very different life situations than me, very different, you know what I mean? But I think, I would say that in my 20s, I really struggled with that.
Mhm.
And something happened in my later 20s where I just stopped allowing people who were going to sweat my freedom. Like, girl, like I remember when I did a wedding for myself. I did a wedding for myself.
I
when
remember that. I was like, what's happening? It was nice. Pictures were nice though.
Listen, I was like 28. And it was an anniversary of the assaults had happened.
Oh,
And
I didn't
was
know
like,
that.
yeah. And so I was like, what do you do when you really commit to yourself, like really fully?
So you were
right?
reclaiming that day. Oh, that
For
makes
sure,
total sense.
right? And so I was, that's kind of how I decided to do it. And I had a couple people like get real twisted up about it, and they were like, "This is ridiculous," and why? Do
Even
you
when
have
you
to
told them the
show
reason.
off? Yeah. I mean, I don't think they believed me about the reason, right?
You know how I feel about folks who don't believe you because they don't believe themselves? I hate it when you're an honest person and people don't believe you.
Yeah.
You're like, are you going to hate me for being too free and too honest or hate me for being a liar? It can't be both.
You can't be both.
I need you to pick a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, I didn't know that was the reason you did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so but it caught it made quite a few folks angry when I did it.
Angry.
Like
Thinking
annoyed.
somebody marrying themselves you could think it's weird, but why would it make you angry?
Yeah, it's annoyance and like, it was really interesting. And I'm giving like I look at them in the moment, I was sad that it was held that way, but I was gonna go do it anyway. Like, it wasn't like I was like, this is a choice I've made for myself.
Yeah.
And doing something for myself, right? And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful night. It was like a beautiful set of things I did for myself. It was a beautiful set of people. And then I was able, like, and I think honestly, after that moment in time, I can track that people just didn't really get space with me if I distrusted their ability to be in it in that way. And
yes,
I've had like my friend barometer is real good. I can tell immediately if like this person's going to be my people. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be things to work through. That doesn't mean
that's called a relationship. You're supposed to have things to work through.
Absolutely, right? But like I've been really blessed to find soulmates left and right. Like, it's just a lot.
I think soulmates is one thing. I think too, some people don't get grandfathered in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a
yeah, no.
That's
so hard.
We're loyal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the kind of
absolutely.
person where if I track who I've
Loyal.
chosen from like 31 upward,
Yeah.
I've been real good.
Yeah.
But anybody who got in before that,
Yeah.
that loyalty thing,
Yeah.
I've stopped
dude.
the word
hear you.
loyalty, I kind of feel it has thorns on it. It's like a rose with a thorn. Loyalty can be like the greatest can co-conspire in your demise if it's
Yeah.
misplaced. Misplaced loyalty really scares the shit out of me, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing I did notice is a lot of folks stayed around longer because they thought they were watching me struggle. There were years where I was figuring things out, like almost like a child, like let's try this and let's try that.
You've always been playful with it too.
I love it. Like I'm like, oh, who am I this year?
Yeah,
Let's see what's going on.
absolutely.
Where do I live now? Like, who am I? What am I calling myself?
Yeah, I remember the East Coast to LA transition. How
Child,
much play there
it was a 5-year being bi-coastal until the universe was
Yeah.
like, bitch, you better just move to LA. This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I play around a lot, and I think the folks who are watching me work through that mistook it for struggle.
Yeah.
And they were okay watching me struggle. It wasn't until I settled into LA and started getting externally quantifiable wins. I always thought I was winning the whole time, but started winning in a way that was being clapped for publicly.
Yeah.
That's when certain folks started to get real
so wild out.
quiet or angry or annoyed because like, oh, if I can dismiss you as this. A friend once got caught.
I mean, because you're pre-famous, Blue.
What is pre-famous?
I mean, like
pre-famous?
Yeah, it's pre-famous.
What does pre-famous mean?
I mean, I'm just like, you're one of those people.
I'm
that
nowhere near famous.
Yeah, I get that. That's why you're pre-famous. Like I
don't even think I'm okay. Child, I think I'm chilling.
You are creating a body of work and art and conversation that at some point in time is gonna blow up and many more people are gonna know about it, right?
I'm fighting the urge to push back and just receive this. I'm
just
receiving
receive
it. No, I'm
Just receive
receiving it. You
Just
see
receive
that?
it.
Because I want to be like, girl, what are you talking about? I'm just doing my job.
I listen, I have known a lot of people.
You
like
do.
I have seen a lot of people in a lot
Carla's
of
a
different
lot of folks.
situations, right? Like what I'm saying is that you are in a state right now where you're like incubating your stuff, and
Okay, I'll listen.
when the egg cracks and the baby comes out, that's just gonna be fire. You know what I mean?
You know what? I'm gonna totally receive that. I would a week ago. I would have been like, Karla, no, honey, I just care about the content. But
I know you do.
But I'm learning,
and that's the best place
to
for it to come from.
receive. Yeah, we suck at receiving anything that feels like a compliment.
Absolutely.
But it breaks my heart though, because every win that I've ever gotten, I've always brought my tribe with me. And so anybody who's mad at the abundance when they got to have some of it,
Listen.
logically it doesn't make sense. Because if I had a friend who I thought was about to get put on and she put me on already, I'd be like, bet, we could both be popping. Like, I'm not even stingy with it. But I think we have to stop wanting us from others. If you and I had a friend who said, Karla, you're amazing, I want to cut you a $20,000 check to do this, we would say, wow, I love this person. They had my back. I'm going to always feel safe around them.
Yeah.
My mother once told me, Blue, sometimes people are mad that you have it to give.
Yeah.
Sometimes the abundance is the very thing that pisses people off. Because God forbid you actually have something to give to them. They feel like, why do I need to receive it? That's pride.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what, to round back to the beginning of the conversation, it's all our internalized stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
it is.
internalized colonization, internalized anti-blackness, right? Like for you, I'm sure it's even worse than it is for me, right? Like, because like internalized anti-blackness will have your own people like doing the comparison game, doing the like disproportionate anger, fear, and judgment because
how dare she?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And because it's an extension of policing the black body, right?
That's a perfect segue. Karla, I fucking love you. The next time you come though, because I'm speaking into existence because we have to wrap up in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But the next time you come, it has to be longer.
Yeah.
I need to start making these shows 2 hours. I know whenever I do an hour, I always regret it. I need to start making these shows 2 hours. But I love that you're talking about the black body, because the one thing I love about you is that you were the only other plus size woman in the room a lot of times who I believed liked themselves as much as I liked myself at the time. And when you're a big girl, you know when someone's being performative versus when somebody actually likes their body, and it's really uncomfortable if a performative sister walks in the room, you're like, oh sis, you ain't gotta do all that. Like, if they like you, they just like you. If they don't, they don't. So a lot of times when I'm around performative big girls, I feel so bad because I know I know why they're doing it, and so sometimes I'll be like, well, Karla's here. I think she like herself. I mean, she's human, but I think she likes herself. And so when people see us as 2 plus size women, because I'm in a black body though, it's still gonna be perceived differently because it's a black body. Even if the body looks exactly the fucking same, Karla.
For sure.
The extra shades of melanin.
That's
suddenly.
Right.
I remember when I was younger, there was a guy who only dated big girls, and I liked him. And I was like, well, I'm in. I think I like you. You like my type. Let's go. I went up to him and asked for his number, and he turned me down. And I was so stunned because I had seen the girls he had dated, not to be shallow, but I was like, well, if you like her, you're gonna definitely like me. I was like, oh, honey, I got something for you. So I'm being honest. I'm very objective about beauty, by the way. Like,
I know you are.
If I have an ugly baby, I'll be the first to know, Karla. So I'm not blinded by whatever.
It's a baby.
I was like, oh, look at me having a baby. Maybe she'll grow into that. And so like, I was like, no, if you like her, why don't you like me? My friend had to pull me aside, like, Blue, he only likes big light skinned girls.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking he likes big pretty bitches. What? And he was like, no, they have to be a certain hue. And that shocked me. Because I was so busy looking at fat phobia, I had never thought about complexion. And so what has it been like for you being in a healthy relationship? Because a lot of times when I talk about my sex life on the show, if I go on Hollywood Unlocked, they'll be like, she's lying. Who's fucking her? Which is hilarious, by the way. Yeah. Because a lot of those people, I can tell I'm getting laid more than they are. Yeah. So that's always the tea. Like, honey, I can tell your sacral chakra is backed up. Shut up. So I can tell, honey, but keep typing. Awkward as fuck. So like, what has it been like to be in a healthy relationship, but also to be a plus size woman being loved on in a healthy relationship sexually? Yeah. That's the final frontier.
Listen.
When I get me some of that, y'all can't tell me shit, okay?
One of the things I've had to understand is how much I got overly sexualized in past relationships because people were performing their lust versus feeling it. Yeah. And like had a fetish, right? Of some
I hate
kind.
being fetishized.
Ugh, it's terrible. And like that means that when you are in a healthy relationship, sex is not the only currency that you're talking about care with, right? Like, listen, I was telling my best friend, I was like, this morning I went to go look at my, I've got this like little coffee stand and I put all my little coffee cups in there. And I knew that it had been like emptying out, and I open it up and it's all full and perfectly organized. And I was like, oh, my baby organized my coffee stand.
They call that chore play, by the way.
Yeah.
When instead of foreplay, when your partner tries to get you like gushy and wet by doing chores, I love some chore play. That is nice.
That is one of the ways in which he shows love, right? And
acts of service.
I think it's like it's an acts of service piece, and I think that you get accustomed when you are a bigger woman to people like really only showing interest in you sexually, ironically, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what people will do, like, because they're trying to get some, like, either they don't know how to be in a fully embodied relationship, or they've fetishized you in some way and are trying to prove something to
in
themselves.
LA. A lot of people, there's a guy that I really liked. I'm never gonna tell him because what he said this to me, and if he ever does tell me he likes me, I'm gonna have to tell him, I remember you said that shit. I was telling him a story about a guy who went on a blind date with a big girl and got a blowjob for her and never called her back. And I said, isn't that gross? She was being basically used for blowjobs because he said that big girls are only good for blowjobs because, they're hungry. I thought he'd be appalled, and he laughed and said he has a point. And that was the exact moment I was like,
well, there went that attraction.
Don't think I'm ever going to shoot my shot with you, sir.
Yeah.
And I think if I ever told him, because he thinks he's a good guy, he'd be appalled that he said it, but he meant it, right? Yeah. And knowing that so many men think, oh, big girls are freaky, or something. I went on a podcast. This girl named Mandy was talking about how people were like, Mandy, you only get guys because you're a fat freak, like, you know what I mean? Like, that whole thing of big girls are only good as like plush sex toys is the reason why I think moving forward, for me to get a healthy relationship, I actually am learning that I might want to remove the sex a little bit from the beginning of it, because I need to trust that I'm not being fetishized as a big girl giving head because she's a hungry hippo. Like, that shit is so demoralizing. And they think that, well, because I'm calling you sexy, I'm saying I want to sleep with you, shouldn't you be happy I want to fuck you?
No, I mean, the worst experience, right, is like sleeping with someone and then afterward being like, oh, that was empty, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was, and it's, I mean, listen, if people want to get their kicks in, I'm like all for people.
We've all been through our whole
like,
phase.
Listen,
we're not shaming
right?
that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And like, there is something about the way that people treat your body when you're bigger that, like, you've got to love it to your toes and back, because the world is never going to reflect that to you.
Yeah.
And you've got to hold that as sacred, right? And that means you get to choose at every single moment the way that you interact sexually. It means, like, what are the things that feel good to you? Like, even like the stretching and the, like, what are the things that you do to be in relationship to your body and to not numb your, like, and I think this part of being a survivor was like, for a really long time, I had like my physical body and its needs and my emotional body and its needs, and shall the two never meet, right?
Oh, wow. I call that leaving your body.
Right. And like that disassociation and the process of coming back together again has been, like that. It's rough. It's important and good, but like, I can't experience things disassociated anymore.
I use sex to get back. This is where it gets so complicated for me, because I had an eating disorder, got down to a very, like, they used to call me a greyhound dog. I was so thin, I looked like a greyhound dog. Left the eating disorder, but didn't realize that my metabolism was so fucked up, I gained an extra 100 pounds. Yeah. And then I left my body and realized I had to get back into my body, and I used sex to come back into my body, only to then have sex weaponized against me to over-sexualize me and then take me out of my body. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how do I figure out how to stay in my body and be a part of this world and still feel whatever? And I read somewhere this guy was saying, actually, what a man does right after he like orgasms is how he really feels about you. And there was a video of a guy like looking for his keys and like texting on his phone and ignoring this girl right after they'd had sex and leaving. And I realized the next time I have sex with somebody and I'm intentionally dating them, it's not a, fuck
Yeah.
buddy situation. I'm going to watch how he acts in the hours after he's had his orgasm. Because it's really easy to be really nice to somebody when you want to get your rocks off.
Yeah.
But what happens after that's happened? When you have no incentive because you've already gotten anything that you want.
Yeah.
How do you treat me?
And that's like when you are getting objectified piece.
There's
like,
no aftercare when you're being
there's
objectified.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So your boo has aftercare.
Yeah. He's a good human, man. He's just a really
good
good
love
human.
this for you.
Yeah, he's a really good human. Like a human, like any other human with their
he's a person,
flaws,
yes.
a person, right? Like I'm not gonna. There's no like perfection there, and just a really good human. And I think some of the questions that he's contended with about gender and sexuality as a result of having a relative who has gone through an entire transition.
By the way, that was a gift to you because that means he's already been pre-softened for you.
Yeah,
like butter when you leave it out.
Yeah.
The universe pre-softened him for you. I love that.
It's and willing to do the work, right? Like I think that there's a way to be performative in those situations too, right?
I'm
like,
an ally,
joy,
wink, wink.
right?
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like I don't know. I want that wholeness for people. Like and not just I'm like separated from being in a relationship with him. Like I want the wholeness that I was given in the last couple of years when I had to really hold on, to when I got long COVID, when I did not walk out of a walker till February of the following year. Right?
That's crazy.
Right? Like
and by crazy, I mean like that's absolutely surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the last 3 days I spent them in bed with my heart rate being at 140. Like there are like flares that we call them of like inflammation flaring or whatever. And I had to learn how, like, it was like, all right, you've taken all of these lessons. Here's the final exam.
How do you live with this and be supple and still have a full life?
And yeah, absolutely. And at some point in time, I was like, you know what? I am going to have joy and love and pleasure and happiness and excitement, even if I am living in a body that has a disability and a chronic illness, right? Like that, I will not tie my production to my value, and I'm going to live out like loving and celebrating it because it survived a hurricane.
Your body, you're a walking miracle. And I think a lot of times I tell people all the time, like, give yourself credit for being a walking miracle. Yeah. Like everything, there's an old quote by I think Louise Clifton. Let's cheers that everything up until this point that's tried to kill us has failed. Yeah. Everything that's tried to kill you up until this point has failed. Absolutely. And that's a good reason to celebrate any fucking day of the week. I'm so happy you were here. For those who have somehow dehumanized, objectified, or othered people living with long COVID, the folks are like, well, I know it's like bronchitis. It's no big deal. No, it's not. Yeah. So what would you say as the final word, because we're wrapping up? God, I wish we could have had longer. What would you say to all those folks who think COVID is over, quote unquote? We're in an endemic now, not a pandemic, and it's no big deal. And so what? Who cares? What would you want to say to them who are going to be stunned listening to this and realizing that they might have been more callous than they thought?
Yeah. I mean, part of learning how we live with this, quote unquote, is how do we do the things we need to do to protect the least immunized of us, right? Yeah. Like this isn't about just your ability to walk free in the world.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's about whether or not someone who's immunocompromised can walk into a grocery store and without the specter of death hanging over their head, right? And like, how do we, and I get that it's hard to care. I want to be in community.
People are tired and they're like, I don't have the
I want to be in joy, right? Like I've just finished planning a conference where we really took a lot of, where it's all outdoors. People are masked outdoors to like prevent spread. Everyone's getting a test in the morning. You know what I mean? Like there are ways to plan that include immunocompromised people and people who are going to struggle. And you don't actually know if that, like, it's the whole last 2 years has been like one big game of Russian roulette to me. Right. And like, I never knew which move I was going to make me worse or make me better. And I actually think it's been a big game of Russian roulette for everybody. But just because the bullet has not been in the chamber for you does not mean the bullet is not in the chambers.
Yep. Oof. Karla.
They just shut down Shanghai 2 weeks ago with another outbreak.
Are you part of the group who thinks that another surge might be coming?
Oh, yeah, I know it is.
All right. What's my final word? Because we went through a lot.
We did.
I love you.
I love you
I
too,
fucking
girl.
love you, seriously. Like, you're such a good guest because I feel like we covered so many topics. And I think there's some people who I would have had on the show where I would have been nervous taking them so many places and had them. But I knew that you were going to be able to, I don't want to say keep up because that seems a little bit elitist, but you were going to be able to be okay doing that dance with me. If I had to think about a final word that I want to share with folks, I'm going to have a moment of vulnerability. I think I tweeted about this earlier, about how I was in a space yesterday where someone asked my friend about something, about someone, and my friend was like, oh, I didn't hear anything she said. I was too busy looking at her perfect body. And as a woman, not just as a plus size woman, so it's not about the whole fat thing, but as a woman, there was an emptiness to that statement that really made me sad. Like, I went home sad hearing that. Like, you didn't hear anything she said because you were too busy focused on her perfect body. First of all, what's the perfect body? And second of all, really? It just really made me think about how 20 years ago, how much more painful it would have been to me. And so I just want everybody to stop and think. I know we live in LA where everybody's superficial and everybody wants to be perfect and everybody's getting surgery. But one of the things I wrote today that I'm really just kind of sitting with and a lot of people have reacted to is, don't worry about being perfect. I want to be better than perfect. I want to be whole, right?
Yeah.
Being whole is so much better than the perception of being perfect, because perfect actually doesn't exist. And so I just want everybody listening to this, whether they're thinking about Karla talking about long COVID and having the supple thoughtfulness to think about others and not just thinking about yourself, or you're dating and you're in a body that is not conventionally clapped for and figuring out how to get fucked and loved and fight and do all those things properly and still thinking you're worthy of a partner, or you're looking at, people who are saying just work harder. Because that's why you're poor, you dummies. You're lazy. Whatever it is, I'm always going to ask myself, do I get to be whole in this space? And if I'm not whole, how do I get to a place of wholeness? Because I think being whole is something that all of us are quietly trying to figure out right now, because I think the last 2 years has chipped away so much out of us. Yeah. Oh, Karla, you're amazing. Tell everybody how they can find you and stay connected with you, because I think you're dope.
You can look at my Twitter. It's Karlita, Karlita, Liliana, Liliana.
I love that you said Karlita. Yes, I want to do a little shimmy. And by the way, Karla, you know a lot of people. You've been playing modest. Karla's a big deal. She does a lot of amazing work. The past 14 years watching you do amazing work in all these different sectors, and I'm just so fucking proud of you all the goddamn time. The whole point of this show was to bring people on that I want to give their flowers to their face. And then one of the things that I will say too, we were talking about the Latinx community before we go, is that because of how I look, when I tell people that I'm Haitian and Cuban, they're like, oh, you're Haitian. I said, no, I'm Haitian and Cuban. Like, no, you're Haitian. And I realize it's because they don't want to include me in the Latinx experience. And there have been so many times where there's been Latinx things happening where you made it a point to invite me as the Celia Cruz of the group. And you've always been mindful. Well, I don't know if you've been mindful, but you've never made me feel excluded from that community.
Because you're a part of it.
But it's a community that often tries to push me back out.
Agree.
Right?
I agree.
And they're like, well, you don't speak enough Spanish. I'm like, really? I think my father being Cuban's enough.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for that, because I think a lot of like Afro-Latin people, especially the Americanized ones, who can't do performative culture things and roll their R's enough to be loved on, it helps sometimes just to have someone else in your community say, yeah, you belong. You're one of us.
Listen, I believe it is absolutely fundamentally necessary for white Latinx people to be making Latinidad a coalition that doesn't take advantage of Black culture, but embraces and loves on its Black people.
Yeah.
And like, my family looks from your shade to mine. Right?
My uncle looks just like you. Yes.
Right? You know
So we understand.
Like, that's part of the history of being from a culture where like
Everybody
it
gets
was
in.
mixed, right? Like
Latin culture is so mixy.
I remember someone, a white person once said to me, like, it'll all just get better once everyone mixes. And I was like, have you met Latinx people?
We've already done that.
Yeah, we've done that.
And we're actually the most racially fucked up sometimes.
Yeah,
so that's not the answer.
That is not the answer.
Being colorblind means you don't see the black people.
I've been doing trainings with non-black Latinx people about anti-blackness.
Oh, you're doing the Lord's work. Okay, on that note, please, now if you weren't sold before, for that alone, you should follow Karla, because y'all think the Latinx community is about where y'all, the African American and American community was probably like in 1973. We're about 30, 40 years behind.
It's time to bring us up.
So please support people like her who are trying to bring our people into the future or the present, to be perfectly honest. This is Humanized. Please follow us wherever you follow podcasts. I will be doing more shows in April. I've been doing them bi-weekly, but this show, I was like, no, I'm going to make sure that we make time for Karla. Karla, when you come back, I'm going to ask you what you want to talk about, because I want to give you some time to give me I feel like there's too much for us to talk about. You're going to have to help me. You're going to have to help me with the itinerary next time. I love you for coming. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.